Well, if you're not in the auditorium in Livermore, this won't make any sense to you at all, but could we hear it for our worship team? I think what's surprising to most people is that most of the people on the stage that lead worship are not paid. They're doing this they have other jobs, they have other things they do, and they come here for rehearsals, they work all week to make that happen. We've got a few paid people, they're coordinating the whole thing, but a lot of the people you see up here that are using their gifts to bless you are people who are working 40-hour jobs somewhere else and raising their kids. And man, for all the unpaid leadership of this church, God bless you. We couldn't do it without you, and you're doing a great job. You're just knocking it out of the park. Well, our summer series has been awesome so far, and I've been listening to the different teachers and just talk about being blessed. We're raising up a whole team of teachers around here that will be able to cover the East Bay in the years to come, and we've been doing this series on being favored and being blessed, and I hope you've enjoyed the different characters that the team has pulled out as we ponder God's abundant favor. Every now and then I'll have you say a phrase out loud, and the reason I do it is to try to get it kind of embedded in your brain. And here's the phrase, God's abundant favor. Will you say that? God's abundant favor. God's abundant favor. The Hebrew word for favor is charis. It's a beautiful word. It means unearned blessing. It's so much better than karma, because what goes around. Charis means you don't pay for what you did. And so many of us are still stuck in that thing as well. Oh, I'm such a great person. I mean, it's like, yeah, we know how great you are. You tell us all the time. Charis is when we didn't earn it or deserve it. And we have this Heavenly Father that's different than any of these other so-called gods. Sometimes he even appears to be kind of an overindulgent Father. The church comes along kind of and says, you're spoiling them, make them feel more guilty. And the Father just says, nah, that's a short-term motivator. That doesn't work. I'm going to love them into loving me back. And that's this thing, charis. And it includes so many things. It can take on so many forms. It can take on material forms, like God giving us the money that we need and then extra money. The stuff that we need and then extra stuff. But there's also charis that isn't material at all. It's how God favors people with crazy things like good looks. And believe me, it's tough. I got to tell you. How God favors people with strength and abilities and health, and he favors people with likable personalities and skill sets that all the way from when they go into kindergarten become obvious to everyone. And that's just God's favor. She doesn't know how to do that. She doesn't know what she does to people when she enters a room, but she's favored. And these are characteristics that quickly push us up the ladder. It's characteristics that make other people jealous of you. Because we tease so much about, oh, you think you're so awesome, but actually you are awesome. You're God's gift to every environment that you go into. And you are the hope of the world, because Jesus in you is God's plan for our world. God favors some of us with opportunities for education that other people don't have. He favors us with opportunities for employment that other people don't have. Unearned graces that blessed people then quickly take for granted. And sometimes we develop this really ugly sense of entitlement. And that's what we're coming against this summer, this sense of where we stop assuming that everyone else in the world has the same advantages that we were born with. It's like we're born on third base, but we think we hit a triple. I'm I'm always a little embarrassed for that person. That person's been so obviously blessed by God, but they don't seem to know it. They've had a lot of God's blessings just poured out on them, but boy, when you hear them tell the story, it's like they did everything. They don't fully appreciate how much God did to get them where they are today. Oh yeah, they worked hard, they sacrificed, they stayed up late at night when other people were sleeping. They got up early. They worked weekends. Yeah, of course. They worked hard using all that God had already given them. God blessed them with a lot of it, whether they acknowledge him or not. But then on the flip side, it's so refreshing when you run into that person who's so obviously blessed in many ways, and they're constantly giving God the glory. And it's not just words out of their mouth, it's their spirit of attitude. They have this sense of wonder about, why me? It's just so unfair that God has blessed me so much. And then they go from that to realizing, oh wait, there's a reason why God has blessed me. All right, so last weekend we sat with a couple of blessed guys. Do you remember the sermon last weekend? It was about a couple of best friends for a lifetime. Who were they? Josh and Caleb, great guys. And I wish I was preaching that kind of a positive sermon. I pulled the short straw, and this weekend our study leads us to a much more negative example. Judges chapter 13, a man named Samson. Today's lesson occurs in the generations after Joshua and Caleb, when Israel failed to do what Joshua and Caleb told them to do. And it creates what some have called the Dark Ages in Israel's history. It's a period when the natural consequences of not doing what Joshua and Caleb told them to do. And Israel's partial obedience left the promised land absolutely packed with Philistines. And that kept Israel way too close to Philistine culture, which include Philistine sin and Philistine gods. And these gods are demonic gods that Israel's worshiping, and they're worshiping them on every hilltop in all of Israel. And the Philistines were a very impressive culture, intimidating, as a matter of fact. We actually kind of relate to this in the Bay Area. They were the ones in charge, and they were amazing. They were rich. They were far more advanced than the Jews in just about every way. And so the Jews were frankly very intimidated by these people, and also strangely attracted to everything, including the worship, the parties, and even just the way the Philistines organized themselves around city-states. And they were leading in this part of the world as far as how they did things. They had iron. They were able to fashion farm implements as well as weapons. And having iron back then was like having the internet. It was such an advantage. And the Jews were frankly, do we still use this word if we say they were cowed by them? My mom used to say that, and I always used to think that was really funny. But they were just intimidated. And so that's where we start. Judges chapter 13, as Israel is again in one of these seasons, the birth of Samson. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines. It's like the Lord said, well, if you love the Philistines so much, here, I'll let them rule over you. 40 years. A certain man of Zorah named Manoah from the clan of the Danites had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, you are barren and childless, but you're going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. All right, when you read something like that, having read the whole Bible and having been around church, does this story sound like another story you've heard? What? Yeah, Mary and Elizabeth kind of combined. In Elizabeth's case, you're barren, you haven't been able to have a son, the angel of the Lord appears. And by the way, this angel of the Lord is actually a manifestation of God himself. And the way we know it is that when this angel of the Lord appears, first of all, it always says the angel of the Lord instead of an angel. And secondly, the angel of the Lord always receives worship. And angels don't receive worship. And there's only one character in the Bible that's allowed to receive worship. So this is a manifestation of the Trinity. It's just, in your mind, just say, Jesus came to the book of Judges and spoke to Mrs. Manoah. So with that kind of an intro, we're thinking, this kid is another Moses. This kid is another Joshua. This kid is finally going to get Israel out of this dark time and lead them forward. And what do they need to do? They need to repent of their ways. They need to cry out to God for help and say, 40 years. 40 means completion. It's enough. It's enough testing. It's enough wilderness for us. Help us, rally us, help us to claim what is rightfully ours and to do that under God's leadership. This kid's going to do it. And so the angel gives them specific instructions. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink and that you do not eat anything unclean. Who's the angel of the Lord talking to? You paying attention? Who's the angel of the Lord talking to? Mrs. Manoah. And this is what, we don't know her first name, but this is what I love about Scripture is that all other literature from this time in history and for many years forward, the angel would never talk to the woman. The angel would say, go get your husband. But what I love about the Bible is already in the book of Judges, it's liberating women from that, second class way of being viewed. And the angel says, no, I could talk to her. She's the one actually having the baby. And you can tell it's even kind of confusing to Manoah. Like he's like, well, why didn't the angel talk to me? She's like, I don't know. And then Manoah goes, well, go get the angel. And so the angel comes back and goes, yes, sir, that's what I told your wife. Yes, yeah, repeat. Can we move on? But I don't know. There's just something about that resonates. So the angel says, now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink. Who's he talking to? Mrs. Manoah. This is prenatal instructions about drinking wine. It's right here. I'm not making a joke. And also, we'll find out something in a minute. Her having this child, at least during the pregnancy, she's going to completely change her lifestyle because of the child. Anyone who's ever had a baby say, yes, duh. All right, well, to men, that's a shocker. All right, now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink and that you don't eat anything unclean. That means ceremonial unclean, like kosher. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hand of the Philistines. All right, Nazirite. Once again, you're thinking Jesus' hometown is, all right, this kid is gonna be something. But the Nazirite thing, that's different than Nazareth. Nazirite is a vow that God establishes in the Old Testament that somebody wanting to be totally dedicated to God, it's like taking a vow of poverty. It's like becoming a nun. A Nazirite takes a vow that completely changes their lifestyle for the rest of their life. And it changes their lifestyle in a certain way. All right? Nazirite vow. There's 3 things that absolutely change in this kid. Now, usually when you took a Nazirite vow, you're the one who took it. But this little baby, he has no choice in the matter. So he's like a pastor's kid. He's like a missionary kid, I didn't choose this. And so that's why you see sometimes with kids that are raised in these homes, you'll see like the kid either go in one direction or another because for that pastor's kid to rebel, he has to rebel against the whole career of his father. Like a plumber's kid doesn't struggle with that same exact thing. And so, and the vow is actually gonna set him apart in really unusual ways. First of all, no alcohol. And you're like, well, we have that in our household for our kids. But it's not just for when he's a kid, and it's different back then. Remember, back then, in most of Israel, you're not drinking fresh, moving water from a spring. You're drinking water from a cistern. It's gross water. And so a lot of the health problems back then came from the water that people were drinking. But what they discovered, and they didn't understand what we know now, but actually watered down wine was healthier. So even children were given certain amounts of watered down wine. And don't think of alcoholism. As a matter of fact, alcoholism wasn't that big of a deal back then. The moderation, there was just a different culture. But this kid, all the time he's growing up, will never touch alcohol. He won't know what it is. So her relatives are saying to her, why are you giving that kid fresh water? And they're judging her. They would be judging her for that. Because nobody's a Nazirite from when they're 2 years old. All right, so no alcohol. Number 2, he's not gonna get a haircut, ever. No haircut, which, you might think that's kind of cute, but it would set him apart as being weird. Not only that, a Nazirite never combed their hair because when you comb your hair, some of it falls out. Believe you me, I know. So you don't comb your hair. So now you picture this little Bob Marley kid coming to kindergarten, no alcohol, no haircut, all right? He's got dreads. Here's number 3, no dead bodies. Now that's one, because we don't live in such an agricultural whatever environment, we're like, he can't touch a dead body? Why? Because the Nazirite, you see what's happening here? The Nazirite's supposed to be different. What he consumes is extremely important. What he looks like is important. And then the dead body piece, he's not supposed to ever be around death of any kind, because the Nazirite is about life, okay? So God's making a statement here. I don't want those that are dedicated close to me to be about death. I want them to be about life. But the dead body thing becomes very inconvenient in this particular society. First of all, because animals are routinely hunted and killed by the men in the family, and then you didn't take it to a butcher. Everybody knew how to dress an animal so that it could be cooked. That was the role of a man from when he was 13 years old and older. Not the Nazirite, though. He gets a pass. So the other men in the family or in the neighborhood have to do the work for the Nazirite. And after he's married, either his wife or his sons or the neighbors or the relatives still have to do this guy's hunting and gathering for him. All right, men, are you tracking? This guy is going to be viewed as less than his whole life because God told him to be. All right, now if he's a lazy guy, he's going to go, hey, listen, last time you brought me that leg of lamb, it wasn't that great. Could we do a little antelope this time? I mean, but most guys are like, hey, you're taking my manhood away from me. But not only that, just the goat that you're slaughtering for the wedding, he can't be a part of that. And until the goat is actually cooked, he can't even be in the same environment with the goat. All right, I could go on and on about this, but I can tell you're glazing over. So let's quit talking about animals. Let's start talking about human beings. He can't be around human dead bodies. And back then, you don't have like hospitals and then they come home for the last week or two for hospice. Oh, no. Your grandma, your aunt, your uncle, they're all in your compound, your house. And as soon as it gets close to mom's death, the Nazirite moves out. He's not there for the final passing. He's not there for the funeral. He can't even go to her grave, ever. Okay, so you see, this is costing them. This commitment to God is costing the Nazirite and all the people around him. It's kind of like when your family tried to get you to go to the lake this weekend, and you go, well, we'll go, but we got to go to church. And they're like, you're so weird. What is wrong with you? Didn't you go to church last month? So you look at this story and you're thinking, surely Samson's going to be an amazing hero. He's going to rescue us. He's a Moses. And that's really good because Israel has been under the thumb of the Philistines for the last 40 years. And so Israel has not been living in the bounty of the valleys of the Promised Land, the Jordan River Valley, the beauty of all the agriculture that's there. They've been living up in the caves like animals, scratching out, eking out a living, trying to just stay out of the Philistines' way. Because if you get in the Philistines' way, yeah, that's not going to be good. So this guy we're gonna save us. So let's see how Samson fares in keeping this vow. A vow, by the way, that was chosen for him. He didn't choose it, but it's an assignment that's very clear. What's his assignment? Look at chapter 13, verse 5, the last part. What is Samson's life assignment? See it? I'm doing this to annoy the people who don't open their Bibles while I'm preaching. There are Bibles in the back as you walk in. There's a Bible on your phone you could get. You own a Bible at home. What's your deal? All right, 13, verse 5, I'll read it to you. Samson will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hand of the Philistines. That's his job. That's his job. That's difficult, but it's so simple, it's enviable to those of us that spend our whole lives trying to figure out, what is my mission? What is God calling me to do? But everyone else, they hear one sermon and they cry for 5 minutes and then they have their life mission. I got nothing. And so in one way, it's enviable. But on the other hand, we're about to see that a clear assignment from God and incredible gifting is still not enough. There's a third element. You can get a clear assignment from God and you can get incredible gifting. But if you don't know the story, here's the spoiler alert right here. Samson is a 10-talent guy. And he will never in his lifetime accomplish a 10-talent thing. Not even the day he dies. He's a 10-talent guy. Do you know what I mean by that, 10-talent guy? Do you or don't you? He's gifted. He's incredibly gifted. Jesus tells stories in the Bible about someone who is handed 1 talent, 3 talents, 5 talents. Samson is a 10-talent guy. And he's going to disappoint Israel for his entire life. On his gravestone, it could be written, oh, he had potential. Now, the sad thing is, he's going to do some cool 5-talent stuff that actually will impress Sunday school boys for years. He's like Hercules, only he loves God. But he's not Hercules, only he loves God. He's like a two-dimensional Disney character. And not the hero. Just like us, Samson was expected to perform on his God-given calling. Samson was expected to invest all of this gifting into the mission, capitalizing on every blessing with personal risk and hard work for the greater good, and not just for his own benefit or entertainment. That's how it is with God's favor. We're talking about we're blessed and God's favor. God's favor provides this amazing vehicle. God's favor is not a Ford Focus, it's a Tesla. God's favor provides this amazing vehicle and fills it with the best gas. I'm not talking AM, PM. I'm talking Shell Premium. God's favor is the vehicle and the gas, but guess what? We still have to get in and drive. And we have to drive towards something, and we have to drive away from something. What's beautiful about this is when we drive towards something, we automatically drive away from something. And that something we're driving away from, you probably shouldn't stay there very long. Now, some of us have grown up in this vehicle and with this gas, and what we do is we're just revving the engine all the time and showing off. Samson grew up his parents seem to be pretty cool. We don't know very much about them, but the environment he grew up in, oh my goodness. His grandparents and the cousins and all the parents and all their friends had done very little to create a godly environment for this boy to be born into. The Israel Samson grew up in had compromised everything holy. It's like a large extended family where grandma was the only one who went to church. And everybody else talked about how holy grandma was, and everybody else thought that because grandma was so holy, they're all gonna go to heaven. But the whole family is living like they're headed somewhere else. That's Israel. Israel is an extended family of millions of people who are living for another God and living to party and living another dream. And they're living in caves. Their life is terrible, but the very thought of repenting or changing or whatever for 40 years. So Manoah and his wife are alone. They're starting from scratch to raise this little dreadlocked hero. I say these words because I wonder how many of you feel that way. You know, in your life group, you've got friends that are like, you know, their cousins are Christians, their brother is a Christian, and you're like, whoa, that'd be nice. You know, it'd be nice at Thanksgiving for everyone to want to thank God and bow their head and pray, but everybody just kind of always looks at you. All right, do your thing. Don't make it too long. The turkey's getting cold. And this is the atmosphere you're raising your children in. We're swimming upstream now in many cases in the mission field called the Bay Area of California, of the United States in 2014. Some of us are not only swimming upstream when we go outside of our house, we're swimming upstream right inside our homes. We're working hard to break this chain that the Bible calls the sins of the fathers. Mrs. Manoah heard from the angel of the angel of the Lord said to Mrs. Manoah, your son is destined to be different. He's supposed to be different. Church, I want to preach at us right now. I want you to be willing to listen to this, and I want you to be willing to evaluate. Are you the parent that's always trying to help your daughter be the same as everybody else? Are you the intimidated parent who always worries that you're not allowing your kids to do more younger, even though it kind of bothers you how everything just seems to be kind of breaking down in our society in regards to even when a child enters into a certain behavior or is allowed to do certain things? Do you feel alone? Do you feel lonely in that? Do you feel like the other moms are judging you? Are you a parent who buys your kid things that you can't afford just because the other kids have it? Are you a parent who takes your kids on experiences that your family cannot afford? And you foolishly put your family in even more debt, or you're not saving enough for the family's future or education, but you do it because you want your child to be the same as all their friends and even their cousins? We got to be better than that. Somebody's got to put their foot down. Somebody's got to say, well, that's what they do, but that's not what we do. Somebody's got to say, that's them, that's not us. Somebody's got to talk back to the children. You know, we used to say, kids, don't talk back to your mom. Now we have to say, hey, mom, go ahead and talk back to your kids. We have to say to our kids, you know what? That's great that that family does that. If you'd been born into that family, you'd probably be really happy right now. Sucks to be you. And don't say sucks. Church, make no mistake about this. In the San Francisco East Bay in 2014, our sons and our daughters must be raised to be different, not same. Same isn't working. Same is everybody just floating down a stream towards a waterfall. Our families have to be different. Our kids have to be different. Different than the neighbor kids, different than the cousins, different than the kids at school, different than the kids on the ball team. They actually must not fit in, even though that hurts us because it affects their popularity. The Bible does not call us to raise popular children. The Bible calls us to raise leaders, godly leaders. And you know what? Here's the deal. It starts with our behavior because our kids are watching us. So when we go to a party, when we hang out, when we're talking, when we're sharing, if we don't seem any different than the sinful society that we live in, why would we expect our children to be any different than us? Wherever we take it, they're gonna take it a little bit further. That means we gotta pull back so that where they end up is not over the cliff. We've gotta discipline ourselves as the adults in this relationship. And we've gotta stop letting our children dictate or letting our children's friends dictate what our family is gonna stand for and be and do and represent, and what are our family values, and what makes us not the same as the world, but just hurts. It hurts when our child appears unusual. It hurts when they show up at school with, they can't cut their hair. I just love that analogy because you would have thought, oh, that kid would be so cool. He'd be so popular. No, not back then. He wouldn't. They shaved kids' heads back then because of lice and bugs and stuff. This kid would be viewed as a germ carrier. All right, we better get into the story, huh? I'm out of time and I haven't even. All right, verse 24, the woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Hume Lake. All right. So God's now talking to the kid. But here's the problem. The kid never, chapter 14. Samson went down to Timnah. He's an adult now. And he saw there was a young Philistine woman. And when he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. What's sad is these are the first words that are ever recorded for us in the story. And it's indicative of his whole life. I saw what I want. You go get it for me, because I'm blessed. His father and mother replied, well, wait a minute. Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Come on. Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? Can we talk about this? No, Mom. Get it for me now. Verse 5, Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. This is the weirdest day. There's so many weird things about this. Okay, first of all, that the Spirit of the Lord comes on this guy, and that is the story of his life. If you want to, you can picture a long-haired Conan barbarian, former governor of California. Do we have him? Yeah, there he is. There he is. Leading California. But to me, I don't picture this. I picture more of this. I don't know. He's trying. But, because when I picture Samson, I don't picture a real muscle-bound guy. I picture a little guy that then the Spirit of the Lord comes over him, and it just shocks everybody what he's able to do. But what's weird is it doesn't seem to shock Samson what he's able to do. He just tears the lion apart. The lion's probably 100, 150 pounds. And did we mention it's a lion? And then he just kills it. And then he just goes on with his day. His mom's all, hey, what are the scratches for? He's like, oh, I don't know. Let's go check out my new wife. Sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. Now, did we not say that he's not supposed to be near something? Yeah. Okay, he scooped out the honey with his hands out of the lion's carcass and ate it. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some honey. And they ate it too, but he didn't tell them that he'd taken the honey from the lion's carcass. They don't know any of the lion story, actually. And the mom's eating the honey. She goes, it has just a different flavor to it. You know, I like it, but. Now his father went down to see the woman, and there Samson held a feast. Where's the feast? With a bunch of Philistines. There's not one single one of his brothers there. He's partying with the enemy. He's marrying into the enemy's family. When the people saw him, they saw, this guy doesn't have any friends. So they lined up 30 groomsmen. The guy at his wedding has 30 Philistine groomsmen because he doesn't have any friends. Then he tells them a riddle, and the riddle is about the lion and the honey, and they don't know what it is. And he says, yeah, no. And he says, if you can solve the riddle in the next 7 days during this feast, I'll give you 30 sets of clothing. But if you can't solve the riddle and the 7 days is over, you have to give me 30 sets of clothing. They couldn't give the answer. Look at verse 15. On the fourth day, they said to Samson's wife, coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Oh, the Middle East. Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, you hate me. You don't love me or any of us Kardashians. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. He says, I haven't even told my folks the answer, so why should I tell it to you? She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. You know, guys, if this is how the engagement goes, so on the seventh day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to the people. She went right to So they guessed it. He gets mad. Look at verse 19. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, killed 30 innocent other guys that aren't even part of the story, stripped them of everything, and gave their clothes to those who explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he returned to his father's home, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who attended him at the feast. So this guy uses all of God's gifting to satisfy his lust and his rage. And by the way, that's all he's really ever gonna do with his gifting, is to just meet his own needs for that day. Verse 15, later on at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He thinks she's still his wife. He says, I'm gonna go to my wife's room. You know that's a biblical way of saying what? Don't say it. I'm going to my wife's room, he said. But the father was like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I thought you hated her. And the father's even looking at him like, why don't you hate her? I gave her to one of the 30 groomsmen that we lined up for you. Here's her little sister. Come on out. The little sister's like, what? Yeah, have her. She's awesome. She makes scones, I'm telling you. Seriously. Samson said, this time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I'm really gonna hurt them. So he went out and he does this whole thing where he catches foxes with his bare hands, ties their tails together, puts a torch in it, and the foxes go running out into the fields and burn down. This starts to sound like a Disney movie. It's so weird. First of all, that he's able to accomplish this. Secondly, that he does it on his own. He doesn't have any friends. And thirdly, he uses all this spirit-led gifting for this project. The Philistines, verse 6, when they said, who did this? They were told, Samson. Samson did it. So the Philistines went up and burned her alive and burned her father to death. Samson says, since you've acted like this, I swear I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them, and then he went and lived in a cave. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, and they're going to attack the whole nation now. And the nation's like, whoa, 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 what did we do? And the Philistines said, your hero, Samson, your leader, Samson. The Philistines have identified Samson as the Jewish leader, and the Jews haven't even identified him as their leader. He did this, so we're going to go to war with you. Does this sound like what you've been reading in the papers, by the way? This is so weird that we're studying this right now. You killed them, so we're going to war with you. You did this, so it's just like, so then 3,000 Jews went down to the cave to the rock of Elam, not to say, hey, Samson, great leader, rally us, let's get some weapons, let's get some training going. Let's go. No, 3,000 Jews went to the cave and they said, hey, we're gonna tie you up and turn you over to the Philistines. We don't wanna fight with them. And Samson goes, all right, just don't kill me yourself. Go ahead and tie me up. They're all, why'd you do this to them? Why did you create this problem? He goes, I just did what they did to me. You see how like this 10-talent guy, he doesn't get it. So they tie him up, and then the Spirit of the Lord comes over him, and the Philistines take him, and he breaks loose, and he looks down, and there's a donkey's bones that are there. All the meat's been eaten off of it, but it's still a dead body. And he grabs the jawbone of a donkey, and he uses it as a weapon, and he kills 1,000 Philistines in this totally 360. He probably like flew through the air, slow motion, spun around, kicked the guy. It's amazing. And of course, when you're growing up in Sunday school, this is a story that, they told us to get us to behave ourselves until our parents got out of church. And where the boys are and the girls are like, hey, and the boys are like, oh, that is awesome. We all missed the point of the story, that this guy was supposed to lead 3,000 armed men into battle, not one guy with the jawbone of a donkey in his hands. And then there's Delilah. Wow. Verse 16, chapter 16. One day Samson went to Gaza where he saw a prostitute. 2 words there. Samson went down to Gaza. Survey says, don't go there. Where he went to spend the night with a prostitute. The blessed man of God, the 10-talent guy. People of Gaza were told, Samson's here. So they plotted, they're going to kill him. He escapes in the middle of the night. He takes the city gates of Gaza and carries them up to the top of a hill and throws them over the top edge of the hill. I mean, this guy is just, so, you're like, wow. And then it's like, wait a minute, what was he doing in Gaza again? Sometime later, verse 4, he falls in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Now, he should have been warned. Do you know what the name Delilah means? Of course you don't. Now you do. Delilah means she will suck the very life out of you. Stay away. That's what it means. He meets her and goes, hey, how about we get together and get married and you wreck my life even worse than it is now? I know, that sounds great. And that's exactly what she does. She finds out that he has this supernatural strength. Of course, everybody knows it. The Philistines definitely know it. She says, how do you get your strength? She never has his back. She's never on his team. She just cries and cries and cries till she gets what she wants. And he gives it to her. He tells her the secret. And you know what it doesn't say it, but what he's saying is, well, I blew it on the alcohol thing because I've been partying with Philistines my whole life. I blew it on the dead body thing many times over, but I never cut my hair. So this is kind of like the person that says, well, I prayed a prayer at camp when I was 9 years old, and so God has to let me go to heaven. And so I've still got my hair, and if they cut my hair, that'll be it. And you know what? God in heaven went, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right, buddy. And he falls asleep in Delilah's lap, and she's got the guys hiding in the other room. And as soon as they cut off enough strands, enough of those dreadlocks, he wakes up and he's weak. He can't fight. And the Spirit of the Lord doesn't come upon him. The Philistines take him and they poke out his eyes and they use him as a joke for the rest of his life. He is pushing, the circular grain, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with, how they do the stone and the ox. They don't have an ox, they just have him. And they've got a guy whipping him, getting him to pull and a slave boy leading him around because he's blind. He lives in a cell. He's like a circus act. And his hair starts growing back out again. And as his hair starts growing back out, he starts seeing some things. It's interesting. He's blind now, but now he can see. And he starts seeing some things. And what he starts seeing is, okay, this, and this. And they bring him into a big party so he can be like a joke, an act for the party. And his hair has grown out, as has his realization. And he gets the boy to take him over by the pillars that are holding up the building. And he prays this prayer. You'll read it there. And in the prayer, he says, "O sovereign Lord." That's how he opens the prayer. With those words, the author of Judges is trying to tell us something. This is the first godly prayer this guy has ever prayed in his life. And it's on the day he commits suicide. It's on the day he takes down. It's not, now you know what? He's not committing suicide. That's a wrong way of putting it. He's giving his life to fight this group of people that he was supposed to fight his whole life. There's 3,000 of them in the building, and he's smart enough to know how Philistine architecture works and that these pillars are the load-bearing pillars of the whole building. If he can get those pillars down, he can bring the building down, and there's Philistines all over the place. "O sovereign Lord," and he says, "Give me, on this last day of my life, give me something, give me vengeance." And the Spirit of the Lord comes on him. He pushes those pillars apart, or he pulls them together. We don't know which. But the building comes down and 3,000 Philistines are killed, as is Samson. Now that's an amazing way to go out. Unfortunately, for a 10-talent guy, it's not where we would say, okay, well then everything came together and everything's perfect. No, life's more complicated than that. At least his last day was awesome. That was a way. That was what he should do. And I think even that if you say, well, the moral of the story or whatever, but I don't know about the moral of the story, but at least we go away with this thought: God will never, 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 never. God will never give up on you. I will never give up on you. That's the mysterious, sometimes well-kept secret of grace. Sometimes the church doesn't preach this enough because pastors want you to think, well, this might be your last chance, you know. Probably isn't. It might be. We're not in charge of that. The only thing that would make this moment to be your last chance would be if you stopped breathing oxygen, you had a heart attack, you got hit by a truck, your brain waves stopped somehow before you had another opportunity to say, wait a minute, I have a lot of talent, I have a lot of blessings, I'm wasting them on myself. I'm selfish. I'm prideful. I don't seek after God enough to ask him, why? What was this about? Friend, if you can learn anything from the life of Samson, is just that last day of his life, run that back a few years and lead the people God called you to lead, to do what God called you to do. And stop messing around with this and stop waiting. Oh, I'll get around to it. How about today? I mean, how about saying, and just as you reflect on this in the next 48 hours, you talk to your friend, your Christian friend, not that other friend that lets you get away with all kinds of stuff. As you talk to your wife and you open up to her and you say, you know what? Man, Steve, he ticks me off sometimes, but he's right. And I think the Spirit of the Lord is talking to me. I need to straighten up. I need to ask God some really serious questions about what my life purpose is and what I was supposed to accomplish. But then you're like, but I have so many regrets. Yeah, everybody does. Everybody does. It's not too late. Give your life mission, give your schedule over to God. Give your hard work or your laziness over to God. Give your entitlement or your inability to enjoy what God has given you. Give it all over to God. And then whatever he gives back to you, that's what's for you. And he'll probably give back to you way more than you need. But for everything else, for the energy, the strength, the talent, the money, everything, bless somebody else with that. And you know what else? Lead somebody else, starting with your own children. Father, we come to you now with this powerful thought. And I know I'm an imperfect preacher, and that worries me at times because people could react to me and then write this message off. But Lord, don't let them write you off. Oh Lord, haunt us with what we could be if we would just turn ourselves over to our Creator. Haunt us with that reality. Change something about our behavior in the next 7 days that is toward understanding how and why we're blessed. Don't let it just be a thought that's in our head, but let it be a thought that's in our hands.